to the wonderful world of Ovations. I'm Scotty D, and this is a Ovation Elite Standard model 6778, serial number 524082. Isn't it beauty? These pickups are pretty good sounding. This one has a little access hole in the back of its big old bowl back, and it really doesn't have any access through the front side. So that's the deal with this one. The top came off the bowl due to it being all dried out. So we're gonna humidify this one, and I'll show you how I do it. And by the way, this was made in New Hartford, Connecticut, USA, during the time of, come on, music product? Interesting. Got a little hot water here. I got my trusty sponge here. It's a wet one. That water's close to boiling. But anyways, what I do is I put it in this little Tupperware, cut a couple holes in the top, and that will slowly add hydration to the spruce soundboard. And the reason for the hydration deal is that, I'm going to zoom in real close. You probably won't be able to see what's going on the sides very much, but if I push this down, you'll see there's a giant gap. And if I push it in at the same time, it kind of wants to bulge out just beyond the center line. If I push it in the center, I think what's happened is that the wood has shrunk this way, and it's pulling the bowl this way, and it's bulging the bowl out in the back. So we'll hydrate it. It'll spread out wider this way, and it'll bring the back towards the wood, and then it'll close that gap. So let's we'll put the sponge inside, and we'll bag the guitar with a kitchen trash bag, just a white one. I'll show you. Now I'm going to reposition the sponge so that it sits down in the bowl, and then I'll place the body of the guitar in the trash bag. Now some people would say that I should just leave it in this trash bag and throw it in the bin and have the trash man pick it up next week. But my customer's like, hell no, I'm not throwing away my beloved Ovation. Anyways, what I did is I came around with the stretch wrap, and I did a couple little wraps like that, and sealed it up where it'll hang for a week. Now, let's take a look at that other Ovation. I want to show you a strange phenomenon that's going on with it. I'm trying to figure out. Maybe you guys can help me figure this out before this episode ends. Any of you Connecticut guys, chime in and tell us what's going on with Ovation. They're going to open up a new plant, I've heard. Yeah, I done heard they're going to start making them here in the USA once again. Now this one's a 12 stringer. It's got the sound hole, it's got the slotted peg head, and it's got a bunch of cracks down here. Now one of them I glued up, and the other one I'm going to glue up right now, and I'll show you the strange thing that I'm talking about. So this one I'm hydrating directly with wet paper towels on the inside of this soundboard. They're actually They've been in there for a while now, about an hour or so, and I'm getting ready to put some glue in here. But watch what happens when I warm this up with a hair dryer. It's like the polyurethane actually shrinks when it gets hot and it flattens out. I glued this crack yesterday, and I'm going to glue this crack right now. Well, I seem to sense that the heat causes the crack to close back up a little bit, at least in the poly. Not in the wood maybe, but I'm definitely seeing a reaction from the heating of the polyurethane here. Well, we're going to get a little glue in there and clamp it up and let's set it aside for now. This is one of those big sound holes. I can get my arm all the way in the guitar, but this is these are the two pieces of paper towel, wet paper towels that I had in there. They were hydrating the spruce so that it closes up. And, well, it makes it more flexible. I'm going to heat it again from the outside and inside. I'm going to put hot hide glue in there. And I've got a couple clamps that are going to pull the braces up against the soundboard and squish it back down. I'm going to do it real fast here. Flatten out this top. So why hot hide glue? Why am I heating everything and getting everything wet? Well, when wood gets wet and hot, it's a good time to bend it back into the shape. In this case, we're trying to flatten this baby out. I just washed my hands so my finger's not pushing a bunch of dirty dirt down in this crack. I actually want to thin this down just a little bit more. And I'm going to stick my arm inside and push up on the soundboard. That helps get that glue in there. I'll give it a little wipe. Dry it off again. Watch that crack flatten out. Now that it's hot and flat, I'll put in the clamps. Now you can see what's going on from the outside here. I've got this thick Lexan caul. It's about a ½ inch thick, 12 millimeters. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide, and it's spanning across the crack. I'll bring the camera inside so you can see where the feet of the C-clamps are resting on the braces. So there you can see the two internal braces and how the bottom foot of the C-clamps, the sound hole clamps, are resting on the braces. So they're pushing up on the braces from both the bottom and down on the spruce soundboard from the top, and the 2 feet stabilizing feet that keep the clamps parallel to the top. They're just resting on these 2 pieces of hockey puck there. There's not a lot of pressure there on those 2. It's just like I said, stabilizing. And you can see the full bracing pattern of the Ovation down here this way. The other one's braced entirely different than this one. This one may have been made in a different factory. Let's look. Nope, same factory, probably. It's same Come On Music product. The tag fell off. I'm going to reinstall this after I'm done with the glue up, and then we'll restring it. May as well do that while the other one's backed up, and then we'll cut out and come back. The 12 strings neck was in a bit of a up bow, so I did the usual truss rod nut service by removing the truss rod nut, flattening it out on a diamond stone, lubing it up, and reinstalling it. Then I'll put the neck into a clamp to force it into a back bow using this bar clamp, some poplar wood, and some cauls at the 1st and 12th fret. I'll leave that in a clamp for 3 days. Before releasing it from the clamp, I tighten the truss rod by turning the nut clockwise until it feels like it's not going to go anymore. This usually puts the neck into a pretty serious back bow, but when I tighten the strings, the string tension usually takes it back to flat, and if I need to, I can loosen it. Alright, for the 12 string we're going to go with these 80-20 bronze because they have the brightest sound. They're not quite as corrosion resistant as the phosphor bronze. What really matters the most to me is the sound. And that really bright sound comes from there being more zinc in these strings. Both phosphor and 80-20 are mostly copper, but the 80-20 has more zinc, which makes it more like brass, and phosphor has a little bit of phosphor in it, less than 1%, but it has tin, which doesn't make it quite as hard. It's more like bronze, and brass being harder than bronze. So these are harder, but they're more corrosion. They will corrode quicker, they will rust, whatever. Let's put them on there. Everybody just loves these through bridges. Not. When we're doing a setup, these are kind of a pain in the butt. Because if you need to take the saddle out, you got to loosen the strings all the way. I'm praying and hoping that I got this saddle right. There were 3 shims down inside of it. Loose plastic shims. They were just really flimsy and wimpy, and it was making the saddle super tall. And so instead of having to remove a ton of material from the bottom of the saddle, I was able to just take the shims out. So, alright, I'll put these strings on, we'll hear how it sounds. My method over here down on this end is to come about 2 or 3 string posts beyond where I need to thread it into, and I take the string and I bend it like a little foot here, and then like a little knee right here. So it's like a little leg. It's like a little leg right there. And then I get the hole and I put it through, because you don't want a bunch of excess string flopping around as you tighten it and having it whip the slotted peg head and, you know, whipping the finish and slapping it and stuff, you know what I'm saying? You can put a bunch of scratches in your peg head if you leave a bunch of excess string, and this goes for classical guitars too, I guess. I do the classical guitars the same way because they always have slotted peg heads. But my really nice Taylor 812 has a slotted peg head. It's a 12 fret to the body, and that baby's expensive. Okay, I got the tag stuck back in there with gel super glue and 2 magnets. Let's tighten them strings. Here's what that was. 1 rubber coated magnet. It doesn't matter on the Ovation. It doesn't matter if you scratch the fiberglass with the magnet on the back, but for normal guitars, this works.
In the club down in El Soho where they drink champagne. It tastes just like Coca-Cola, C-O-L-A, Cola. Well, right now it's got 7 64ths on the bass side and about 3.5 64ths on the treble side. It feels a little stiff on the bass side, so I'm going to adjust that saddle. Pain in the butt to adjust the saddle because of the strings going through the bridge. Anyways, I thought it's only been 4 days. Maybe we should break open the other Ovation and see if she's made any change. The humidity's gone up quite a bit outdoors, about 10%. We're up to 40% humidity in the house right now. Let's take a look. La da ding, la da da, la da do, la da da. Nope, still a big gap. That's a big old gap, isn't it? Well, yeah, let's let it hang for a few more. All right, we got good news, guys. This is 1 week under hydration, and this closed up the gap, but I'm going to let it sit for at least another day or two before I go ahead and glue it up. But this is a big deal, that this is all pushing together nicely now. And one thing I want to show to you other guys that don't have the String Tech workstation is how to make a jig out of 2x4s to glue up your Ovation tops. Okay, so for me, I'm just going to use my String Tech workstation, and what I do is I just let the ass end hang off over the sawhorse. But what you will do, and I'll put a 2x4 here, and I'll use bar clamps to clamp here and here, and I'll put hockey pucks here to push down on the top so I don't dent the wood with the 2x4. But what you would do at home is you would take a 2x4 and cut it a length this way, 30 inches, and then take you 2 2x4s and screw them into the bottom 2x4. Maybe you'd want to line up 2 or 3 2x4s under the 2 pieces that are coming in at an angle like this. And then you want to put some carpet, just some utility carpet like I have right here, and on the floor down there. You can buy a whole roll of this for 10-15 bucks over at Lowe's, like a 4x8 piece, and just, you know, put it over your 2x4 sections, or you just use towels or something like that. But that'll give you something to run your bar clamps and squash down with your bar clamps. And I'll get you the measurement here. You want to put the 2x4s about 12 inches on center, and bring them down 16 inches, and they'll be 9 inches on center up here at this end. So 12 inches on this end, 9 inches on that end, at least 16 inches long. And then your 2x4s that go this way, you'll want them to be at least 20 inches. And then that way you'll have a nice little trip over to the lumber yard to get a couple 2x4s and a piece of carpet. Okay, I think we're ready. I chipped off a bunch of that kind of sawtooth, jagged edged stuff. You can see how the poly has really cracked right here. I'll probably end up sanding that off later, but there was a lot of jagged edges here right at the seam, and I chipped that off with a X-Acto blade. And now we'll get the epoxy ready. Okay, so as a recap, we humidified the spruce soundboard by placing this wet sponge in a Tupperware inside the bowl for a week and a half with also with this one through one of the small sound holes. That's a humidifier from Grover. Let those hang out for a week and a half. Sealed up the body with a 13-gallon kitchen bag in this stretch wrap. Now that it's humidified, we'll use the West Systems marine grade epoxy resin. I don't use these little pumps because it makes about a whole cup of a mixture, which is way too much for a guitar repair. It's great if you're doing a boat. So I transfer the epoxy and the colloidal silica into these smaller containers, and I measure it out here on this one here. The 206 is the hardener. It's 5 parts resin to 1 part hardener. So I'm going to get two of these hardeners, which is a lot really, 0.04 grams. And then we'll multiply that by 6, which is what, 3 grams? 0.041 times 6, 0.246. So I'll continue until I get to 0.246. I'll stir it up for a good minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. This is a lot. I never mix up this much, but we got quite an area there to. Okay. One thing you'll want to do if you're working with the epoxy resin is to do a test batch, or if you haven't used it in a year, do a test batch. It's worth taking a day to test out a little batch to make sure it's still good. I've been using this stuff every week or so, so I'm pretty sure it's good. Plus I've got it in those hermetically sealed small containers, which I think helps preserve it, keeps it from being contaminated. And the reason for using the epoxy resin is that we're gluing wood to fiberglass. And there's no wood glue or CA glue that's good for doing that. It's just epoxy, or I can't think of anything else that would be good. I'm pretty sure that's what they used at the Ovation factory too. Because you can see some squeeze out on the inside, and it definitely looks like thick epoxy. This stuff's pretty thin, that's why I've got the thickener, the colloidal silica. I'm going to start off with the thin, but then I'll drop in some of the thickened. And I might find myself dropping it in from the inside as well. There's a little hole back there I can use. Yeah, we can access the joint pretty good there from the inside, I see. I'm going to vacuum it up first. Got the trusty Stu Mac scissor jack on the inside there. Gosh, this looks like it might be kind of messy. Maybe I should use a toothpick. Might grab a toothpick and some gloves. I'll give it a scissor jack a little pump. Let me get the gloves. Got one of those real thin toothpicks here. Got the scissor jack in there. We me get a little bit of that thickened stuff in there. I'll mix up a little of that colloidal silica now. I've got it in this little shaker. It's like a little spice container. It just takes a little bit. No more than like 15% by volume. Mix that in. Yeah. Oh man. Looks like some pretty good coverage there. Let's see how it looks on the inside. Yes, decent squeeze out on the inside too. I'll give it a quick wipe inside and out and we'll strap it up. Got about halfway around and I decided to stop for a little cleanup. You can see, I mean, it takes like so much less than you think it might take to glue up with epoxy. This is like a ridiculous amount of squeeze out. Maybe I'll get some wax paper on here. Either way, I think I'm going to be doing a bit of sanding afterwards too. And that there is exercise tubing. I bought a whole roll because I find it kind of handy for epoxy glue ups. Oh, one other thing about epoxy glue ups is you don't want to wrench down on the joint real hard. Epoxy has a little bit of a problem when all of it squeezes out, when too much of it squeezes out of a joint. You kind of want it to gap fill and just let it set for 24 hours. So next, the bar clamp. Another nice thing about this workstation is that it does have these hold downs, because as you start to tighten it down here on this end, the neck wants to whoop up on this end. So I don't know, you could put a bag of lead shot down here to hold it down, maybe a bag like that one over there, Stu Mac. You can weigh down the neck any which way you want, probably, if you're using a 2x4s. And you really don't want to crank down, massively. It does look like these two shims are still kind of loose, so I'm going to stick in some like 20 thousandths of an inch little wood veneers right in there to just give a little bit more pressure in the middle. Yep, a little bit of shim stock from my maple neck shim collection there, just to give it a little more pressure. Yep, perfect. Doesn't take a lot, just enough to hold it in place for 24 hours. And I got other work to do, so I don't need this set up for till tomorrow. Next day here, and you can see the epoxy has cured. I mean, It's awesome. So that's exactly what we'd like to see. Now, I did do something about 5 hours after I put the clamps on. I came back, I checked that little cup. It was coagulated. So I came in and I noticed there was some squeeze out down here and it had gotten on the rubber. So I moved each little band aside and cleaned the area with acetone, because a little bit of cleanup sooner will save a giant headache later, because epoxy's hard stuff. This is what I'm talking about right here. This piece got stuck. See, that didn't get cleaned up. That's what I'm talking about. We'll see if acetone can clean that up right quick. I thought I got most of it, but there's a couple that got away from me. Oh boy. So it's 22 hours later, even acetone's not helping too much to release. That baby's stuck on there real good. Alright. We're free! Next, I'll use a file to knock down all those squeeze out lumps, little bits of rubber from the exercise tubing. You can see there's a lot of jagged edges still and a little gap. I'll drop in some Glue Boost Master Glue, ultra thin. And then I'll use the accelerator. Just a pinch. There it is, the Master Glue. Thin and ultra thin. It's worth it. Now this part is not for the faint of heart. I'm going to get rid of these cracks in the poly. And I'll do that by scraping a deep canyon in over top of the crack. I make a deal with my customers that they want me to get rid of the cracks, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make it look brand new or make it look like perfect, like it's going to go into a museum or anything. We're just going to get rid of the cracks. And it might leave behind some witness lines and some wiping marks from the CA glue. I'll clean it up with some naphtha on a Q-tip. Whoa, that baby almost got away from me. And once again, this is the Master Glue. I'll switch over to the fill and finish after this first application of the more structural grade glue. Harpeth Guitar Picks. If you contact me directly and you're in the US, we'll work out a deal where I can send you some picks. I've also got t-shirts for sale and Harpeth Guitar stickers. Just let me know what you want. If you want 4 stickers, send me a text. Send me your address, your name, and I'll give you a price. I did one light sanding. I'll go back over it with a little more of the Fill and Finish Ultra Thin. See here, it's starting to accelerate even without spraying. We'll spray a little more after I spread it around. Once, twice, 3 times a blue goose. Now I'll take 120 grit on a craft stick. After I get off most of the high spots, I'll go at it with some 220. And then I'll start wiping the ultra thin with paper towels. I also have a paper towel with paste wax as a barrier coat between a little piece of cardboard and the Glue Boost paper towel. After 3 or 4 wipes, I throw it out and grab a new paper towel. But I reuse the cardboard and the paste waxed paper towel. And these are the everyday paper towels: Bounty, Sparkle, Brawny, Great Value. For the application part, we use the everyday stuff. And then for the polishing and buffing, we'll use the Viva paper towels. But after the wiping out of the Film Finish Ultra Thin, I start sanding it with 1000 grit sandpaper. I'll also work my way up through 2000 grit. I'll do the Trizact 3000 with a little Simple Green as a lubricant. Then I'll go at it with the Meguiar's Ultra Cut 105 Mirror Glaze Compound. And it did take care of the witness lines pretty good. I do have a couple wipe marks, but I have an idea of blending the ultra thin with a little bit of a chemical that would thin it out even further and maybe help it to flow out a little better. I'll try it on the other area. Here you can see over to the right there, we've got some wipe marks. But this guitar has a lot of washboard and ripples in it anyways, so I'm not going to stress out over that. But I will get started with these other 2 areas that are really bad next to the bridge. This was the crack that my customer was most concerned about. Big old gnarly crack over here. It's hard to get a good camera angle when I use 2 hands. My head's in the middle of my hands. But yeah, man, this type of work, scraping poly cracks, is not for anybody that is not really already pretty good with finish repairs. If you've never done a finish repair, I would not recommend doing what I just did. I've got years of experience with wet sanding and polishing. I've been doing automotive stuff since the 80s, which is really closely related to guitar finish. And of course, I've worked with furniture finishes and shellac. Anything finish related, I've been studying it for half my lifetime. When I first read Dan Earlywine's book on the Guitar Player's Repair Guide, there was a whole slew of books in the back that he recommended people to check out. You know, go purchase these. It was like a big, long list, maybe 30 books. And there were a few books in there that I did grab. I bought the Understanding Wood Finishes book. And so I've had that book for about 25 years now. Maybe even close to 30. But anyways, I've read Dan's book and the wood finishing book front to back several times. Even before YouTube was around and before the Luth group formed, I'd read those books and practiced this stuff. Long before Glue Boost. But these two cracks are turning out pretty good, really. I like to sand and then drop fill a little bit of the Glue Boost Ultra Thin over the binding area and over that seam where the soundboard came loose from the rim. This is like one of those micro application, maybe like a cosmetic applying brush. Okay, once again we got a craft stick with 120. I do the 120 and the 220 on the craft stick, and then I'll do 320 and 400 on a foam block. Here you can really see the witness line between the new finish and the old finish. But I wiped over top of it with my paper towels and my cardboard and my waxed paper towel, and I added the N-butyl acetate, half and half. So I went N-butyl acetate and I mixed it with the Ultra Thin, Fill and Finish Ultra Thin with butyl acetate. It thinned it out a little bit, helped it flow better, and I used the accelerator, and as soon as you hit it with the accelerator, it hardens perfectly. And then I'll wipe a little accelerator on a paper towel. Wipe the paper towel with accelerator over top of that. Continue sanding with 1500, 2000, and Trizact 3000. Or 3000 Trizact. Lastly, I'll use the Meguiar's Mirror Glaze 105 Ultra Cut Compound. Gets rid of all the witness lines. But once again, I'm not looking for a 100% bump-free, perfect finish like it came from the factory. You'd have to take the bridge off, take off those little leaves off. You'd have to completely strip the guitar of all of its neck to really do a good job with perfect refinish of the top. Which I explained to the customer, we're not going there. I put a little smiley face shape to the end of each string before I slide it through the bridge. It helps it get up and over the saddle. And then on this one, we're going to do the Martin wrap with the strings. We take the excess string and we come around towards center and then back underneath the part of the string that's coming in from the nut, and then pull a right angle into both pieces. I'll do it here on the low E string. It might be easier to see. But they call that the Martin wrap. And there's no way strings ever coming out of that post when you wrap. Kind of a pain in the butt to get the strings back out of the posts when it's time for a string change, but some people like it. Once again, I'll look inside at that squeeze out. It's looking good. There's evidence of a repair. That's just what we want to see. No forgeries here.
Well, I guess this concludes the first ever edition of the Wonderful World of Ovation. And of course, I'm plugging it in. How can a guitar with, you know, this shape sound good without being plugged in? I don't know. You want to hear it without being plugged in? It's kind of quiet and thin. But yeah, man, I gotta put that little plate back on here and call the customer and let them know that their beloved Ovation is ready to return to service. Anyways, guys, I really appreciate you hanging out today. Hope to see you next time. Catch you later.